My name is Jessica Martinez, and on March 15th at exactly 3:22 p.m. in TechFlow Solutions' glass-walled Innovation Hub conference room, my mother-in-law, Carol Thompson, looked directly at me across the polished steel table and said the words that would ultimately expose her complete incompetence and transform our entire workplace culture forever. Jessica clearly lacks the environmental awareness and professional maturity needed for a healthy workspace. Some people just aren't meant for collaborative corporate environments. Before I tell you how those poisonous words led me to document her systematic destruction of our office environment, gather evidence that resulted in a company-wide investigation, and ultimately secure her termination while implementing the environmental program that increased our productivity by 34% and won 3 industry sustainability awards, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Trust me, you'll want to see how a daughter-in-law's persecution became a mother-in-law's career-ending mistake. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The foundation of this toxic workplace drama began 18 months earlier, when TechFlow Solutions, Austin's fastest-growing data analytics company, decided to prioritize environmental wellness as part of their corporate culture transformation initiative. What started as a progressive move toward employee health and sustainable business practices would eventually become the battleground, where family dysfunction collided with professional excellence, in ways that would reshape our understanding of workplace toxicity, both literally and figuratively. TechFlow Solutions had been founded in 2018 by visionary entrepreneur Robert Chen, whose background in environmental engineering and software development created a unique perspective on how physical workspace design could enhance cognitive performance and employee satisfaction. The company's original headquarters occupied a converted warehouse in East Austin, where exposed brick walls and industrial lighting created the kind of authentic startup atmosphere that attracted top talent from across the tech industry. Robert's philosophy emphasized that environmental factors including air quality, natural lighting, plant life, and workspace organization directly influenced creativity, problem-solving abilities, and team collaboration in measurable ways. The rapid growth that followed TechFlow's initial success in developing predictive analytics software for Fortune 500 companies necessitated a move to more sophisticated facilities that could accommodate expanding teams while maintaining the environmental consciousness that had become central to company identity. The new headquarters in downtown Austin's Tech District occupied 8 floors of a modern glass tower designed with sustainability features, including energy-efficient lighting systems, advanced air filtration, and flexible workspace configurations that could be adapted to different project requirements and team dynamics. Robert Chen's commitment to environmental excellence extended beyond mere aesthetic considerations to encompass scientific understanding of how physical spaces influence human performance and well-being. His background included graduate research in environmental psychology and extensive consultation with workplace design experts who had documented correlations between environmental factors and productivity metrics across various industries. The investment in environmental optimization was substantial, but generated measurable returns through reduced employee turnover, increased client satisfaction scores, and enhanced reputation within the competitive Austin tech market. The environmental management position was created specifically to oversee the complex systems and protocols that maintained optimal workspace conditions throughout TechFlow's expanded operations. The role required sophisticated understanding of air quality monitoring, indoor plant management, lighting optimization, acoustic design, and the integration of natural elements with technological infrastructure. The position demanded someone with formal education in environmental science or related fields, along with practical experience implementing workplace wellness programs in corporate settings. The original environmental manager, Daniel Brooks, possessed exactly the qualifications and expertise that the position required. His master's degree in environmental science from UT Austin, combined with 5 years of experience managing sustainability programs for major corporations, provided the technical foundation necessary for maintaining TechFlow's sophisticated environmental systems. Daniel's approach was methodical and evidence-based, utilizing air quality sensors, employee feedback surveys, and productivity metrics to continuously optimize workspace conditions and validate the effectiveness of environmental interventions. Under Daniel's management, TechFlow's environmental program achieved remarkable success that exceeded even Robert Chen's ambitious expectations. Employee satisfaction surveys consistently ranked workspace environment among the highest factors contributing to job satisfaction, while productivity metrics showed steady improvement that correlated with environmental enhancements. The company received recognition from Austin Business Journal for innovative workplace design and was featured in several industry publications as a model for environmentally conscious corporate culture. The air quality throughout TechFlow's offices maintained consistently excellent ratings through Daniel's careful selection and maintenance of plant species that were scientifically proven to improve indoor air quality while requiring minimal maintenance. His plant selection process considered factors including light requirements, air purification capabilities, maintenance needs, and aesthetic compatibility with modern office design. The result was a carefully curated environment where employees reported increased energy levels, reduced stress, and enhanced focus during demanding project work. Daniel's systematic approach to environmental management included detailed documentation of all protocols, maintenance schedules, and performance metrics that provided transparency and accountability for the significant investment that TechFlow had made in environmental excellence. His quarterly reports to senior management included objective data on air quality measurements, plant health assessments, employee feedback analysis, and recommendations for continuous improvement that demonstrated the tangible value of professional environmental management. The acoustic design elements that Daniel implemented addressed one of the most challenging aspects of open office environments by strategically positioning sound-absorbing plants and creating natural barriers that reduced noise pollution without compromising the collaborative atmosphere that TechFlow valued. His understanding of how different plant species could serve dual purposes as aesthetic elements and functional sound management tools reflected the sophisticated expertise that professional environmental management required. The tragic irony of what would follow Daniel's departure was that his success had created such an obviously positive impact on workplace culture and business performance that the environmental management position was considered essential for TechFlow's continued success. The challenge was finding a replacement who possessed similar qualifications and could maintain the high standards that employees and management had come to expect from their workplace environment. Daniel's resignation came suddenly when his spouse received a job offer in Seattle that represented a significant career advancement opportunity they couldn't refuse. The timing was particularly challenging because it occurred during TechFlow's busiest season, when client project deadlines and employee stress levels were already elevated. The need to find a qualified replacement quickly created pressure to expedite the hiring process in ways that would ultimately compromise the careful selection criteria that should have guided such an important decision. The human resources team, led by Sarah Williams, began an intensive search for candidates with appropriate qualifications and experience in environmental management, workplace wellness, and corporate sustainability programs. The initial candidate pool included several promising individuals with relevant education and experience who understood the technical requirements and cultural significance of environmental management within TechFlow's organizational structure. However, the search process was complicated by the need to find someone who could start immediately and the limited number of qualified candidates available in the Austin market during the specific timeframe when replacement was needed. The pressure to fill the position quickly began to influence evaluation criteria in ways that prioritized availability over qualifications and immediate start dates over long-term suitability for the complex responsibilities that effective environmental management required. This was the context in which Carol Thompson's application somehow made it through initial screening processes, despite qualifications that were obviously inadequate for the technical and professional requirements that the position demanded. Carol's background as a florist, while involving some plant-related knowledge, lacked the scientific foundation, corporate experience, and systematic thinking that environmental management in a sophisticated corporate setting required. The florist shop that Carol had operated for 15 years in a small strip mall catered primarily to residential customers seeking arrangements for special occasions, with business models and customer service requirements that bore little resemblance to the complex environmental systems and corporate accountability that characterized professional environmental management. Her experience with plants was limited to short-term decorative arrangements, rather than the long-term maintenance of living systems designed to optimize workspace conditions for enhanced human performance. More significantly, Carol's personality and communication style were fundamentally incompatible with the collaborative, evidence-based approach that effective environmental management required in corporate settings. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her tendency toward dramatic emotional responses, resistance to feedback, and preference for controlling rather than consulting with others suggested interpersonal challenges that would interfere with the cooperative relationships essential for success in professional environments. The family dynamics that had shaped my relationship with Carol over the 2 years since David and I were married provided extensive evidence of these personality traits and communication patterns that should have raised serious concerns about her suitability for any professional role requiring collaboration and accountability. Family gatherings consistently devolved into conflicts initiated by Carol's tendency to create drama, assign blame for imaginary problems, and demand attention through increasingly elaborate complaints about perceived slights or inadequate recognition of her contributions. Carol's approach to plant care, which I had observed during visits to her florist shop and family home, emphasized aesthetic impact over plant health and sustainability. Her arrangements prioritized visual drama through combinations of species that often created competitive growing conditions, where stronger plants overwhelmed weaker ones, resulting in arrangements that looked impressive initially but deteriorated rapidly as natural plant behaviors conflicted with artificial design requirements. The management philosophy that Carol demonstrated in her florist business relied heavily on micromanagement and emotional manipulation, rather than systematic processes and professional standards that corporate environments required. Her employees at the flower shop experienced high turnover rates and frequently complained about unpredictable work schedules, inconsistent expectations, and hostile treatment when performance didn't meet standards that were never clearly communicated or consistently applied. Despite these obvious warning signs about Carol's qualifications and professional suitability, the combination of time pressure, limited candidate availability, and what I would later discover was active manipulation of the hiring process somehow resulted in her selection for the environmental manager position at TechFlow Solutions. The decision represented a fundamental failure of due diligence that would have far-reaching consequences for employee welfare, workplace culture, and business performance. The manipulation of the hiring process that enabled Carol's appointment involved strategic misrepresentation of her qualifications and experience through carefully crafted application materials that emphasized her plant-related background, while obscuring the significant gaps in education, corporate experience, and technical knowledge that should have disqualified her candidacy. The references she provided were carefully selected to avoid previous employees or business associates who might have provided honest assessments of her professional capabilities and interpersonal skills. More troubling was the possibility that family connections had influenced the hiring decision in ways that compromised the objective evaluation that such an important position required. David's relationship with certain TechFlow employees, combined with Carol's ability to present herself favorably during limited interview interactions, may have created advantages that overcame the obvious inadequacy of her qualifications for professional environmental management responsibilities. The announcement of Carol's hiring as TechFlow's new environmental manager created immediate concern among employees who understood the technical requirements and cultural significance of environmental management within our workplace culture. The contrast between Daniel Brooks's sophisticated expertise and Carol's obvious lack of relevant qualifications was apparent to anyone familiar with the complexity of maintaining optimal environmental conditions in modern corporate settings. My own reaction to the news was particularly complex because it combined professional concern about workplace impacts with personal anxiety about potential family conflicts that might spill over into professional relationships and career development. The prospect of working in the same organization as Carol, given our history of interpersonal challenges during family interactions, created stress that was compounded by recognition that her lack of qualifications would likely result in environmental degradation that would affect everyone's daily work experience. The scientific principles underlying effective environmental management in corporate settings require systematic understanding of plant biology, air quality dynamics, lighting optimization, and human psychology that Carol's florist background had never provided. The complexity of maintaining living systems that serve functional purposes rather than decorative ones demands expertise that goes far beyond the aesthetic considerations that characterize floral arrangement for special occasions. Indoor air quality management involves understanding how different plant species process various airborne pollutants, their oxygen production rates under different lighting conditions, their water and nutrient requirements, and their seasonal growth patterns that affect their air purification capabilities. The selection of appropriate plant species for specific workspace zones requires knowledge of light tolerance, mature size projections, maintenance requirements, and potential allergen production that could affect employee health and comfort. The integration of plant systems with building infrastructure, including HVAC systems, artificial lighting, and workspace design, requires coordination with facilities management, understanding of building codes and safety regulations, and ability to adapt environmental elements to changing business needs and space configurations. Professional environmental management involves continuous monitoring, data collection, and adjustment of systems based on objective performance metrics rather than subjective aesthetic preferences. The accountability requirements for environmental management in corporate settings include documentation of protocols, maintenance schedules, budget management, vendor relationships, and regular reporting to senior management about program effectiveness and return on investment. The position requires professional communication skills, project management capabilities, and ability to collaborate effectively with diverse teams including facilities, human resources, and senior leadership. Carol's preparation for assuming these complex responsibilities consisted primarily of enthusiasm for plants and confidence that her florist experience provided adequate foundation for professional environmental management. Her lack of awareness about the gap between her qualifications and the position requirements suggested either fundamental misunderstanding of what environmental management involved or deliberate disregard for professional standards that should have guided her decision to accept a position for which she was obviously unqualified. The transition period between Daniel's departure and Carol's official start date provided opportunity for orientation and training that might have addressed some knowledge gaps and established clear expectations for performance standards and accountability measures. However, Carol's approach to this preparation period revealed attitudes and behaviors that foreshadowed the workplace conflicts that would soon emerge. Rather than acknowledging her need for extensive education about TechFlow's environmental systems and protocols, Carol expressed confidence that her plant expertise would enable immediate success, while dismissing suggestions that corporate environmental management might require different skills than residential floral design. Her resistance to feedback and unwillingness to recognize complexity that exceeded her experience demonstrated the arrogance and closed-mindedness that would characterize her professional performance. The detailed documentation that Daniel had maintained about environmental protocols, plant care schedules, air quality monitoring, and performance metrics should have provided comprehensive guidance for continuity of effective environmental management. However, Carol's review of these materials was superficial and dismissive, suggesting that systematic approaches were unnecessarily complicated and that intuitive plant care would achieve superior results. This dismissal of evidence-based environmental management in favor of intuitive approaches based on limited florist experience represented a fundamental misunderstanding of the scientific principles and corporate accountability that effective workplace environmental management required. The sophisticated systems that Daniel had developed through years of education and professional experience could not be replaced by enthusiasm and confidence, without regard for technical knowledge and systematic implementation. The warning signs that emerged during Carol's transition period should have prompted reconsideration of her appointment or implementation of additional oversight and support that might have prevented the workplace disruption that would soon follow. However, the combination of time pressure, optimistic assumptions about her ability to learn quickly, and reluctance to admit hiring mistakes allowed the transition to proceed despite mounting evidence that Carol was fundamentally unprepared for the responsibilities she was about to assume. The first day of Carol's tenure as environmental manager at TechFlow Solutions marked the beginning of a workplace transformation that would affect every employee's daily experience, while providing a case study in how poor hiring decisions can rapidly undermine years of careful organizational development and cultural investment. The environmental excellence that had become central to TechFlow's identity was about to be systematically destroyed by someone whose qualifications and professional approach were completely inadequate for the complex responsibilities she had somehow been entrusted to manage. Carol's first week as environmental manager revealed the depth of her incompetence through a series of decisions that systematically undermined every aspect of the carefully designed environmental systems that had made TechFlow Solutions a model workplace. Her approach to plant selection demonstrated complete disregard for the scientific principles that governed indoor air quality, choosing species based solely on visual impact without consideration for their functional requirements or compatibility with office environments. The initial changes began innocuously enough with Carol's announcement that the existing plant collection lacked sufficient aesthetic appeal and failed to create the vibrant atmosphere that modern workspaces required. Her criticism of Daniel's scientifically selected air-purifying plants revealed fundamental misunderstanding of their purpose, dismissing snake plants and pothos as boring, while advocating for dramatic flowering species that would transform the office into what she described as a living garden that would inspire creativity and productivity through visual stimulation. The replacement plants that Carol ordered during her first week included massive bird-of-paradise specimens that required intense natural lighting unavailable in interior office spaces, fragrant jasmine vines that triggered allergic reactions in multiple employees, and elaborate orchid arrangements that demanded precise humidity and temperature control incompatible with standard office environments. Her selections prioritized immediate visual drama over long-term sustainability, creating conditions where expensive plants would inevitably deteriorate, while consuming resources that could have maintained effective air purification systems. The positioning of these inappropriate plants revealed Carol's complete ignorance of workspace functionality and employee needs. She placed towering palm trees directly in front of emergency exits, created visual barriers that blocked natural light from reaching interior workstations, and established elaborate plant displays in high-traffic areas where they obstructed movement and created safety hazards. Her aesthetic vision took precedence over practical considerations, including fire safety, accessibility requirements, and the basic need for employees to navigate their workspace efficiently. The watering schedule that Carol implemented demonstrated her florist mentality applied inappropriately to living workplace systems. Her approach involved daily watering of most plants regardless of their specific moisture requirements, soil conditions, or seasonal growth patterns. This overwatering created root rot in species that required well-drained soil, while simultaneously neglecting plants that needed consistent moisture, resulting in a workspace filled with dying vegetation that created unpleasant odors and attracted insects. The air quality monitoring systems that Daniel had carefully calibrated began registering declining measurements within days of Carol's plant replacements. The removal of proven air-purifying species combined with the introduction of plants that produced airborne pollens and fragrances created atmospheric conditions that triggered respiratory sensitivities and allergic reactions among employees who had previously enjoyed excellent air quality. The sophisticated environmental balance that had taken years to develop was destroyed in less than a week. Employee complaints about the environmental changes began immediately, but were dismissed by Carol as resistance to positive improvements that would benefit everyone once they adjusted to the enhanced natural atmosphere. Her response to feedback demonstrated the defensive and dismissive communication style that would characterize her interactions with anyone who questioned her decisions or suggested alternative approaches based on evidence or experience. The temperature and humidity fluctuations caused by Carol's inappropriate plant selections and excessive watering created uncomfortable working conditions that affected concentration and productivity throughout the office. The tropical plants she favored required humidity levels that were incompatible with electronic equipment and human comfort, while their large leaves and dense growth patterns disrupted air circulation in ways that created hotspots and cold zones that made workspace temperature regulation impossible. My initial attempts to address these environmental problems through polite suggestions and constructive feedback were met with hostility that revealed Carol's unwillingness to acknowledge any limitations in her expertise or mistakes in her implementation. Her response to my concerns about air quality decline and plant selection appropriateness included personal attacks that questioned my environmental awareness and suggestions that my complaints reflected jealousy of her professional success. The tension between Carol's environmental management approach and the scientific principles that should have guided workplace environmental systems created daily frustrations for employees who watched their previously excellent work environment deteriorate under management that prioritized appearance over functionality. The contrast between Daniel's evidence-based success and Carol's intuitive failures became increasingly apparent to everyone except Carol herself, who remained convinced that her dramatic visual improvements would eventually prove superior to the boring technical approach her predecessor had employed. The departmental productivity metrics that had consistently improved under Daniel's environmental management began declining as employees struggled with allergic reactions, respiratory irritation, and workspace disruption caused by Carol's inappropriate plant selections and placement decisions. The correlation between environmental degradation and decreased performance validated the scientific principles that Daniel had applied, while demonstrating the business impact of incompetent environmental management. Carol's resistance to feedback intensified as the problems with her environmental management became more apparent to employees and senior management. Rather than acknowledging that her approach might require adjustment based on objective evidence of declining air quality and employee comfort, she blamed various external factors and previous management decisions for conditions that had clearly resulted from her own inappropriate interventions. The family dynamics that complicated my professional response to Carol's incompetence created additional stress as I navigated between my responsibility to address workplace problems and my desire to avoid family conflicts that could affect my marriage and personal relationships. David's support for his mother's career transition made it difficult to discuss the obvious problems with her performance without appearing to undermine family harmony or professional advancement opportunities. The poisonous atmosphere that Carol's environmental mismanagement created extended beyond physical air quality to encompass workplace culture and interpersonal relationships. Her defensive responses to legitimate concerns, combined with her tendency to personalize professional feedback, created an environment where employees hesitated to report problems or suggest improvements for fear of triggering emotional confrontations that would disrupt team collaboration and productivity. The financial waste associated with Carol's plant purchasing decisions became apparent as expensive specimens began dying within weeks of installation due to inappropriate environmental conditions and care protocols. The budget that Daniel had managed efficiently to maintain sustainable plant systems was being consumed rapidly on replacement plants that were doomed to fail under conditions that Carol either didn't understand or refused to acknowledge. The oversight responsibilities that should have prevented such rapid deterioration of environmental management were complicated by Carol's family connections and the reluctance of human resources and senior management to acknowledge that the hiring decision had been fundamentally flawed. The institutional momentum that protected Carol from immediate accountability allowed her environmental mismanagement to continue, despite mounting evidence of its negative impact on workplace quality and business performance. The systematic documentation that I began maintaining about environmental problems and their impacts represented my first step toward addressing the situation through professional channels that might eventually overcome the family dynamics and institutional inertia that protected Carol from consequences of her incompetence. The objective evidence of air quality decline, employee health impacts, and productivity reduction would eventually provide the foundation for addressing environmental management failures through corporate accountability rather than family diplomacy. The contrast between my software development expertise and environmental management knowledge created opportunities for understanding the technical aspects of Carol's failures while developing strategies for documenting and addressing them through systematic analysis and evidence-based recommendations. My background in data analytics and problem-solving provided tools for approaching the environmental crisis in ways that could eventually overcome the emotional manipulation and family politics that had enabled Carol's destructive management to continue unchallenged. The realization that Carol's environmental management would continue deteriorating workplace conditions until external intervention forced accountability created urgency for developing comprehensive documentation and evidence that could support formal complaints and management review. The health and productivity of my colleagues depended on someone taking action to address environmental problems that Carol either couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge and correct. The growing awareness among employees that environmental management had fundamentally failed created informal pressure for someone to take leadership in addressing problems that were affecting everyone's daily work experience. My combination of technical knowledge, analytical skills, and direct experience with environmental management principles positioned me as a potential advocate for workplace improvements that could restore the environmental excellence that TechFlow had previously achieved. The air quality sensors throughout TechFlow's offices provided objective data about environmental degradation that contradicted Carol's claims about successful improvements to workplace atmosphere. The measurements revealed declining air quality, increased particulate levels, and atmospheric conditions that failed to meet the standards that had previously distinguished TechFlow as a model for environmentally conscious corporate culture. Carol's interpretation of the air quality data demonstrated either fundamental ignorance about environmental monitoring or deliberate misrepresentation of objective evidence that contradicted her management approach. Her explanations for declining measurements included speculation about external pollution, building system problems, and seasonal variations that ignored the obvious correlation between environmental degradation and her plant management decisions. The employee health complaints that began emerging within weeks of Carol's environmental changes included respiratory irritation, allergic reactions, headaches, and concentration difficulties that had been absent under Daniel's management. The pattern of symptoms correlated directly with exposure to specific plant species and environmental conditions that Carol had introduced, providing clear evidence of cause and effect relationships that she refused to acknowledge. The productivity analysis that I conducted using TechFlow's internal performance metrics revealed statistically significant declines in team output, project completion rates, and quality measures that coincided with Carol's assumption of environmental management responsibilities. The data provided objective evidence that environmental mismanagement was affecting business performance in measurable ways that should have prompted immediate management intervention. The documentation process that I initiated included photographic evidence of inappropriate plant placement, air quality measurements, employee health incident reports, and productivity analysis that created comprehensive records of environmental management failures and their impacts. The systematic approach to evidence gathering reflected my analytical background and provided foundation for eventual formal complaints that could overcome family politics and institutional inertia. My personal workspace became a microcosm of the larger environmental problems, as Carol's management decisions created conditions that directly affected my daily productivity and health. The flowering plants that she positioned near my desk triggered allergic reactions that hadn't occurred during my 3 years at TechFlow, while the obstructed lighting and blocked air circulation created uncomfortable working conditions that interfered with concentration and performance. The irony of Carol's environmental mismanagement was that her dramatic visual improvements actually made the workspace less aesthetically pleasing, as plants died, developed disease, and created unsightly conditions that contradicted her stated goals of enhancing office atmosphere through superior plant selection and care. The contrast between her ambitious vision and the deteriorating reality provided obvious evidence of the gap between florist experience and professional environmental management requirements. The defensive strategies that Carol employed to avoid accountability for environmental problems included blaming employees for not appreciating natural beauty, criticizing previous management for creating unrealistic expectations, and suggesting that short-term adjustment periods were necessary before the benefits of her improvements would become apparent. Her refusal to acknowledge objective evidence of declining conditions revealed either psychological inability to recognize failure or deliberate misrepresentation of obvious problems. The escalating conflict between Carol's environmental management and employee welfare created workplace tension that affected team collaboration, project effectiveness, and overall morale in ways that extended far beyond the immediate environmental problems. The uncertainty about whether management would address obvious environmental failures created anxiety among employees who depended on professional leadership to maintain workplace conditions that supported their health and productivity. The family dinner conversations that occurred during this period became increasingly stressful, as David expressed pride in his mother's professional success, while I struggled with knowledge of her environmental management failures and their impact on workplace quality. The disconnect between family perceptions and professional reality created internal conflict about how to address serious workplace problems without damaging personal relationships that were important to my marriage and family harmony. Carol's interpretation of workplace environmental management as an extension of her florist business model led to inappropriate vendor relationships, purchasing decisions, and maintenance protocols that were fundamentally incompatible with corporate requirements for accountability, sustainability, and employee welfare. Her approach treated TechFlow's environmental budget as an unlimited resource for experimenting with dramatic plant displays, rather than a professional responsibility requiring careful stewardship and measurable results. The seasonal changes that occurred during Carol's first months as environmental manager revealed additional problems with her plant selections, as species chosen for immediate visual impact rather than long-term sustainability began experiencing predictable stress from inappropriate lighting, temperature, and humidity conditions. The dying plants created unpleasant odors, attracted pests, and required constant replacement that consumed budget resources while failing to provide the air quality benefits that environmental management was supposed to deliver. The employee feedback surveys that had consistently ranked environmental quality among TechFlow's greatest workplace advantages began reflecting declining satisfaction with air quality, aesthetic appeal, and overall environmental conditions. The survey data provided additional objective evidence that Carol's management approach was failing to meet employee expectations or maintain the environmental standards that had contributed to TechFlow's reputation as an exceptional workplace. My growing expertise in environmental management principles through independent research and consultation with external experts provided knowledge base for developing alternative approaches that could address the problems Carol's mismanagement had created. The contrast between evidence-based environmental science and Carol's intuitive florist approach revealed the magnitude of knowledge gap that should have disqualified her from professional environmental management responsibilities. The recognition that Carol's environmental failures were affecting not only workplace quality, but also TechFlow's reputation within Austin's competitive tech industry created additional urgency for developing solutions that could restore environmental excellence while addressing the family and institutional dynamics that had enabled her destructive management to continue unchallenged. The stakes extended beyond immediate workplace comfort to encompass long-term business success and employee retention in an industry where environmental quality had become a significant factor in talent recruitment and retention. The escalation of workplace environmental problems under Carol's mismanagement reached a critical threshold when 3 employees required medical attention for severe allergic reactions triggered by the fragrant flowering plants she had installed throughout the office space. The emergency room visits occurred within a single week, creating liability concerns that should have prompted immediate investigation and remedial action from human resources and senior management. Emma Davis, a senior data analyst who had never experienced workplace allergies during her 4 years at TechFlow, developed acute respiratory distress that required emergency treatment and resulted in 3 days of medical leave. Her symptoms began during a team meeting in the Innovation Hub conference room, where Carol had positioned elaborate gardenia arrangements that filled the enclosed space with intense fragrance that overwhelmed the air filtration systems. Tyler Johnson experienced a severe asthma attack triggered by the pollen from Carol's inappropriate flowering plants, requiring emergency intervention with his rescue inhaler and immediate departure from the workplace. His medical documentation clearly identified workplace environmental exposure as the trigger for an episode that could have resulted in hospitalization if treatment had been delayed. Rachel Kim developed contact dermatitis from handling contaminated surfaces in areas where Carol's overwatered plants had created fungal growth conditions that spread spores throughout workstations. Her skin reaction was severe enough to require prescription treatment and temporary reassignment to projects that could be completed remotely while her symptoms resolved. The pattern of health incidents created legal liability that should have triggered immediate workplace safety investigations and environmental remediation, according to standard corporate protocols for addressing occupational health hazards. However, Carol's family connections and the reluctance of management to acknowledge hiring mistakes resulted in delayed response and inadequate remediation that allowed dangerous conditions to persist and potentially affect additional employees. Carol's reaction to the health emergencies demonstrated her complete inability to accept responsibility for environmental management failures or implement appropriate corrective measures. Her response included denial that workplace environmental factors could have contributed to medical emergencies, speculation about employee sensitivities that had never been problems under previous management, and suggestions that coincidental timing made correlation with her environmental changes purely circumstantial. The medical documentation provided by affected employees clearly established workplace environmental exposure as the primary factor in their health incidents. contradicting Carol's attempts to minimize her responsibility or suggest alternative explanations. The physicians who treated these cases specifically identified indoor air quality problems and allergen exposure as causative factors that required immediate environmental remediation to prevent additional incidents. Sarah Williams from Human Resources found herself in the difficult position of managing workplace safety incidents that clearly resulted from environmental management failures, while navigating the family dynamics and institutional politics that complicated accountability measures. Her attempts to document incidents and implement corrective measures were undermined by Carol's resistance to acknowledging problems and senior management's reluctance to confront hiring decisions that had obviously been inappropriate. The workers' compensation claims filed by affected employees created additional legal and financial exposure that demonstrated the business impact of Carol's environmental mismanagement beyond immediate workplace comfort and productivity concerns. The insurance investigations that followed included workplace environmental assessments that documented conditions requiring immediate remediation to prevent additional claims and potential regulatory violations. Michael Rodriguez, the facilities manager responsible for building safety and compliance, expressed increasing concern about environmental conditions that violated multiple workplace safety standards and created potential regulatory violations that could result in fines and legal action against TechFlow. His recommendations for immediate environmental remediation were dismissed by Carol as unnecessary panic responses to minor adjustment periods that would resolve naturally as employees adapted to improved environmental conditions. The building management company responsible for maintaining TechFlow's leased space received complaints about environmental conditions that potentially violated lease agreements and building standards for air quality and tenant safety. Their environmental consultants documented problems requiring immediate attention to prevent escalation into regulatory violations and potential lease termination proceedings. The insurance company representing TechFlow's workers' compensation coverage initiated its own investigation of workplace environmental conditions after receiving multiple claims within a short time frame that all identified similar environmental exposure factors. Their risk assessment recommended immediate environmental remediation and management changes to prevent additional claims that could result in premium increases or coverage restrictions. Lisa Anderson, who supervised the software development team where I worked, began expressing private concerns about productivity decline and employee welfare that clearly correlated with environmental degradation under Carol's management. Her observations included decreased team performance, increased sick leave usage, and employee complaints about workspace conditions that had never been problems during her 5 years managing the department. The client meetings that TechFlow regularly hosted in the Innovation Hub conference room became embarrassing experiences as visitors commented on air quality problems, overwhelming plant fragrances, and unprofessional appearance of dying vegetation that contradicted the company's reputation for environmental excellence and attention to detail. Several potential clients expressed concern about workplace conditions that suggested poor management and lack of attention to employee welfare. The competitive disadvantage that environmental problems created in Austin's tight tech talent market became apparent as employee referrals declined and exit interviews began citing workplace environmental conditions as factors in resignation decisions. The recruitment advantages that TechFlow had previously enjoyed through superior environmental quality were being eliminated by Carol's mismanagement, affecting the company's ability to attract and retain top talent. The social media presence that TechFlow had maintained to showcase workplace culture and environmental consciousness became a liability as employee posts began reflecting negative workplace conditions rather than the positive environmental atmosphere that had previously distinguished the company from competitors. The contrast between marketing messages about environmental excellence and actual workplace conditions created credibility problems that affected brand reputation. Dr. Amanda Foster, an environmental consultant who had worked with TechFlow during the original environmental design process, was contacted by several employees seeking independent assessment of workplace conditions and potential solutions for environmental problems. Her preliminary evaluation identified multiple violations of environmental management best practices and recommended immediate intervention to prevent additional health incidents and regulatory violations. The professional relationship between Dr. Foster and TechFlow's senior management provided credibility for her assessment that environmental conditions had deteriorated significantly under Carol's management and required immediate attention to restore workplace safety and environmental quality. Her recommendations included temporary plant removal, air quality remediation, and replacement of environmental management personnel with qualified professionals. Carol's response to external criticism and professional recommendations demonstrated her complete inability to acknowledge expertise that contradicted her approach or accept guidance from environmental management professionals. Her dismissal of Dr. Foster's credentials and recommendations revealed the arrogance and closed-mindedness that made improvement impossible while she remained in the environmental management position. The employee assistance program that TechFlow provided began receiving increased utilization as workers sought support for stress and health problems related to environmental conditions and workplace conflicts surrounding environmental management failures. The pattern of employee assistance requests provided additional documentation of workplace problems requiring immediate management attention. The quarterly business review meetings, where department heads reported on performance metrics and operational challenges, became uncomfortable exercises in documenting declining productivity and increasing personnel problems that clearly correlated with environmental management failures. The objective data contradicted Carol's claims about successful environmental improvements while demonstrating business impact that required executive attention. The air quality monitoring data that Daniel had established as baseline measurements for environmental performance showed consistent decline across all metrics since Carol's appointment, providing objective evidence that environmental management was failing to meet professional standards or maintain acceptable workplace conditions. The scientific data contradicted subjective claims about environmental improvements while documenting health and safety violations. My documentation project expanded to include detailed records of environmental management failures, health incidents, productivity impacts, and regulatory compliance violations that could support formal complaints and external investigations. The systematic approach to evidence gathering reflected my analytical background while creating comprehensive records that could overcome family politics and institutional inertia. The photography documentation that I maintained showed progressive deterioration of plant health, inappropriate placement decisions, and workplace conditions that violated safety standards and professional environmental management practices. The visual evidence complemented air quality data and health incident reports to create comprehensive documentation of environmental management failures. The employee survey that I initiated anonymously through internal systems revealed widespread concern about environmental conditions, health impacts, and management response to obvious problems requiring immediate attention. The survey results provided additional evidence that environmental problems were affecting entire teams rather than isolated individuals with unusual sensitivities. The correlation analysis that I conducted between environmental changes and productivity metrics demonstrated statistically significant relationships between Carol's management decisions and declining workplace performance across multiple departments and project teams. The quantitative analysis provided objective evidence that environmental mismanagement was affecting business outcomes in measurable ways. The research into environmental management best practices and regulatory requirements that I conducted revealed numerous violations and deficiencies in Carol's approach that could result in legal liability, regulatory sanctions, and continued health risks for employees. The professional standards that she was failing to meet provided framework for evaluating her performance against objective criteria rather than subjective opinions. The consultation with external environmental management professionals that I arranged privately confirmed that workplace conditions had deteriorated to levels requiring immediate intervention and complete revision of environmental management practices. The professional assessment validated employee concerns while providing roadmap for restoration of environmental excellence. The strategic planning that I began developing focused on documenting environmental management failures comprehensively enough to overcome institutional resistance to acknowledging hiring mistakes and implementing necessary changes. The approach required patience and systematic evidence gathering that could eventually force accountability through professional channels rather than family diplomacy. The networking within TechFlow's employee community that I cultivated revealed widespread frustration with environmental conditions and support for advocacy efforts that could address obvious problems requiring management attention. The informal coalition that emerged provided foundation for coordinated action that could amplify individual concerns into organizational pressure for change. The regulatory research that I conducted identified potential violations of workplace safety standards, environmental regulations, and professional practices that could result in external investigations and enforcement actions if environmental problems continued without appropriate remediation. The legal liability that Carol's mismanagement created provided additional leverage for demanding management action. The health impact analysis that I developed using employee assistance program utilization, sick leave patterns, and medical incident reports demonstrated clear correlation between environmental changes and declining employee welfare that required immediate management attention. The data provided objective evidence that environmental problems were affecting workforce health in ways that created legal and ethical obligations for corrective action. The business case analysis that I prepared documented financial impacts of environmental mismanagement, including workers' compensation costs, productivity decline, recruitment disadvantages, and potential regulatory penalties that exceeded the cost of hiring qualified environmental management professionals. The economic argument provided framework for justifying immediate management changes based on business considerations rather than employee welfare alone. The timeline documentation that I maintained showed progressive deterioration of environmental conditions from Carol's first day through current crisis levels that demonstrated the urgency of immediate intervention before additional health incidents or regulatory violations occurred. The chronological evidence provided clear causation links between management decisions and workplace problems. The communication strategy that I developed focused on presenting evidence through professional channels that could overcome family dynamics and institutional politics through objective documentation of environmental management failures and their impacts. The systematic approach required careful timing and presentation to maximize effectiveness while minimizing personal risk and family conflict. The preparation for formal action that I undertook included consultation with legal resources, regulatory agencies, and environmental management professionals who could provide support and validation for complaints about workplace environmental conditions. The external expertise provided credibility and guidance for navigating complex institutional and legal processes. The recognition that environmental problems would continue escalating until external pressure forced accountability created urgency for completing documentation and initiating formal complaints that could protect employee welfare while restoring environmental excellence that had previously distinguished TechFlow as an exceptional workplace. The stakes included not only immediate health and safety concerns, but also long-term business viability and professional reputation. The evidence-gathering phase that I had been conducting systematically was approaching completion as documented environmental management failures, health impacts, regulatory violations, and business consequences provided comprehensive foundation for formal action that could overcome institutional resistance and force appropriate management response to obvious environmental crisis requiring immediate professional intervention. The critical mass of documented problems that my investigation had revealed created opportunity for strategic action that could expose Carol's incompetence while demonstrating alternative approaches to environmental management that could restore workplace excellence and prevent additional health incidents. The foundation was established for transitioning from documentation to action that would ultimately transform workplace environmental management and validate professional expertise over family connections and institutional politics. The comprehensive evidence package that I had assembled over 4 months of systematic documentation created an irrefutable case against Carol's environmental management that included health incident reports, air quality measurements, productivity analysis, regulatory compliance violations, and financial impact assessments that no reasonable administration could ignore or dismiss. The moment had arrived to present this evidence through formal channels that would force accountability and demonstrate the professional environmental management expertise that TechFlow desperately needed. The presentation strategy that I developed focused on delivering evidence to senior management through multiple simultaneous channels that would prevent suppression or minimization of documented environmental management failures. The approach included formal complaints to human resources, regulatory agencies, and insurance companies, along with detailed recommendations for immediate remediation and long-term environmental management improvements that could restore workplace excellence. Robert Chen's office on the 15th floor had been the destination for Daniel Brooks's quarterly environmental reports that had consistently documented success and continuous improvement under professional environmental management. The contrast between those positive reports and the crisis documentation that I was about to present would demonstrate the magnitude of deterioration that had occurred under Carol's incompetent leadership. The appointment request that I submitted to Robert's executive assistant included a brief description of urgent environmental management concerns requiring immediate senior leadership attention, along with supporting documentation that established the seriousness of workplace safety and regulatory compliance issues that could no longer be addressed through normal departmental channels. Sarah Williams received simultaneously a formal complaint documenting environmental management failures, health incidents, regulatory violations, and recommendations for immediate corrective action that included detailed evidence supporting each allegation and professional references for verification of environmental management standards and best practices. The regulatory complaint that I filed with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration included comprehensive documentation of workplace environmental hazards, health incidents, and management failures that created ongoing risks for employee welfare and potential violations of federal workplace safety standards that required immediate investigation and enforcement action. The insurance notification that I submitted to TechFlow's workers' compensation carrier included detailed analysis of environmental management failures that had caused multiple health incidents and created ongoing liability exposure that required immediate risk assessment and potential premium adjustments based on demonstrated workplace safety deficiencies. The environmental consultation report that Dr. Amanda Foster prepared at my request provided independent professional assessment of workplace conditions that validated employee concerns while establishing objective standards for evaluating environmental management performance and identifying specific corrective measures required for regulatory compliance and employee safety. The employee coalition that had formed around environmental management concerns included representatives from every department who had experienced health impacts, productivity decline, or workplace safety concerns related to Carol's mismanagement. Their collective testimony provided broad-based validation of individual complaints while demonstrating company-wide impact that required executive intervention. The legal consultation that I had arranged with Austin employment attorneys confirmed that documented environmental management failures created potential liability for TechFlow under workplace safety regulations, while providing guidance for protecting employee rights and ensuring appropriate remediation of hazardous conditions. The timing of formal complaint submission was coordinated to occur simultaneously across multiple channels, preventing any single recipient from suppressing evidence or delaying response, while ensuring that all relevant authorities and stakeholders receive comprehensive documentation of environmental management failures requiring immediate attention. The meeting with Robert Chen that took place 3 days after complaint submission occurred in the same Innovation Hub conference room where Carol had delivered her devastating assessment of my environmental awareness and professional capabilities 6 months earlier. The irony of location was not lost on me as I prepared to present evidence that would expose her complete incompetence, while demonstrating the environmental management expertise that TechFlow actually needed. Robert's expression as he reviewed the comprehensive evidence package revealed shock at the scope of environmental management failures and health impacts that had occurred under his watch, along with concern about regulatory and legal liability that threatened TechFlow's reputation and financial stability. His engineering background enabled him to understand the technical aspects of environmental management failures while recognizing the serious business implications of continued inaction. The air quality data that I presented showed consistent decline across all environmental metrics since Carol's appointment, with measurements falling below acceptable standards for workplace safety and employee health. The scientific evidence contradicted any claims about environmental improvement, while demonstrating clear correlation between management changes and environmental degradation. The health incident documentation included medical reports from 3 employees who had required emergency treatment for environmental exposure, along with additional reports of respiratory problems, allergic reactions, and other health impacts that created workers' compensation claims and potential regulatory violations. The productivity analysis that I had conducted using TechFlow's internal performance metrics demonstrated statistically significant decline in team output, project completion rates, and quality measures that coincided with environmental management changes. The business impact data provided compelling evidence that environmental problems were affecting company performance in measurable ways. The regulatory compliance assessment that Dr. Foster had prepared identified multiple violations of workplace safety standards and environmental management best practices that could result in enforcement actions, fines, and potential legal liability if corrective measures were not implemented immediately. The financial impact analysis that I presented documented costs associated with workers' compensation claims, productivity decline, increased sick leave utilization, and potential regulatory penalties that already exceeded the investment required for professional environmental management. The economic argument provided clear justification for immediate management changes based on business considerations alone. Robert's questions during the presentation focused on verification of evidence, timeline for corrective action, and recommendations for restoring environmental excellence that had previously distinguished TechFlow as a model workplace. His response demonstrated recognition that environmental management failures required immediate attention, while acknowledging that hiring decisions had been fundamentally flawed. The corrective action plan that I proposed included immediate removal of inappropriate plants that were causing health problems, professional air quality remediation, implementation of evidence-based environmental management protocols, and replacement of environmental management personnel with qualified professionals who possessed appropriate education and experience. The implementation timeline that I recommended emphasized urgent measures for employee safety and regulatory compliance, followed by systematic restoration of environmental systems that could rebuild TechFlow's reputation for workplace excellence. The phased approach provided framework for addressing immediate crisis while establishing foundation for long-term environmental management success. The meeting conclusion included Robert's commitment to immediate investigation of environmental management failures and implementation of corrective measures necessary for employee safety and regulatory compliance. His acknowledgement of hiring mistakes and commitment to professional environmental management represented validation of concerns that had been dismissed or minimized for months. The confrontation with Carol that occurred the following day took place in the same conference room, where she had publicly questioned my environmental awareness and professional capabilities. The tables had turned completely as she faced presentation of comprehensive evidence documenting her environmental management failures and their impact on employee health, workplace safety, and business performance. Carol's initial response to the evidence presentation included denial of responsibility, blame shifting to external factors, and personal attacks that demonstrated her inability to address professional criticism constructively. Her defensive reaction validated concerns about her professional suitability, while revealing the emotional instability that made effective environmental management impossible. The specific documentation of her management failures that I presented included photographic evidence of inappropriate plant placement, air quality monitoring data showing environmental degradation, health incident reports linking medical emergencies to her environmental changes, and productivity analysis demonstrating business impact of her decisions. The professional standards assessment that I had prepared compared Carol's environmental management practices to industry best practices and regulatory requirements, revealing numerous deficiencies and violations that demonstrated her fundamental lack of qualifications for professional environmental management responsibilities. Carol's attempts to justify her environmental management decisions revealed complete ignorance of scientific principles, regulatory requirements, and professional standards that governed workplace environmental management. Her explanations for documented failures demonstrated that she neither understood the problems her management had created, nor possessed the knowledge necessary for implementing appropriate solutions. The presentation of alternative environmental management approaches that I had developed showcased evidence-based solutions that could address current problems while preventing future incidents. The comprehensive plan demonstrated practical expertise that contrasted sharply with Carol's ineffective intuitive approaches and established my qualifications for professional environmental management. The termination meeting that followed included human resources representatives, senior management, and legal counsel who confirmed that Carol's environmental management performance had created unacceptable liability and workplace safety violations that required immediate personnel changes. Her dismissal was presented as necessary for employee welfare and regulatory compliance rather than personal or family considerations. Carol's reaction to termination included emotional outbursts, blame assignments, and threats of legal action that revealed her continued inability to acknowledge professional failures or accept responsibility for environmental management disasters that had affected dozens of employees and created significant business liability. The family dynamics that followed Carol's termination created temporary tension as David initially struggled to understand how his mother's professional failure could have been so complete and well documented. The objective evidence of environmental management failures eventually overcame family loyalty as the health and safety implications became clear. The transition period that followed Carol's departure included immediate environmental remediation supervised by Dr. Foster, removal of inappropriate plants that had caused health problems, air quality restoration, and implementation of temporary environmental management protocols until permanent replacement could be hired. The environmental manager position that opened following Carol's termination attracted numerous qualified candidates whose education and experience in environmental science, workplace safety, and corporate environmental management provided stark contrast to Carol's obviously inadequate background in floral arrangement and retail customer service. The interim environmental management role that I assumed while TechFlow conducted its search for permanent replacement allowed me to demonstrate professional environmental management capabilities through successful implementation of evidence-based solutions that immediately improved workplace conditions and employee satisfaction. The environmental restoration that I supervised included systematic replacement of inappropriate plants with scientifically selected air-purifying species, implementation of proper watering and maintenance protocols, restoration of optimal plant placement for air circulation and safety, and establishment of monitoring systems that provided objective measurement of environmental quality. The air quality improvement that resulted from professional environmental management became apparent within weeks as monitoring systems registered consistent improvement across all metrics, employee health complaints ceased, and workplace conditions returned to the excellence that had previously distinguished TechFlow as an exceptional employer. The productivity recovery that accompanied environmental restoration validated the correlation between workplace environmental quality and business performance, with team output, project completion rates, and quality measures returning to levels that exceeded pre-Carol baseline measurements within 2 months of professional environmental management implementation. The employee satisfaction surveys that were conducted following environmental restoration showed dramatic improvement in workplace environment ratings, with environmental quality returning to the top factor contributing to job satisfaction and employee retention that had characterized TechFlow's culture before Carol's destructive management. The recognition from Austin business community that followed TechFlow's environmental crisis and recovery included awards for workplace safety improvement and environmental management excellence that acknowledged the successful transition from environmental disaster to renewed leadership in corporate environmental responsibility. The professional opportunities that emerged from my successful environmental management included offers for permanent appointment as TechFlow's environmental manager, consulting opportunities with other companies seeking environmental management expertise, and speaking engagements at industry conferences about evidence-based environmental management and workplace safety. The permanent environmental manager position that I accepted at TechFlow included expanded responsibilities for environmental policy development, regulatory compliance, employee wellness programs, and sustainability initiatives that positioned the company for continued leadership in corporate environmental responsibility. The environmental management program that I developed and implemented exceeded previous standards through integration of advanced monitoring systems, employee feedback mechanisms, continuous improvement protocols, and performance metrics that provided objective measurement of environmental quality and business impact. The industry recognition that TechFlow received under my environmental management included multiple awards for workplace excellence, environmental innovation, and employee wellness that restored and enhanced the company's reputation as a model for corporate environmental responsibility in Austin's competitive tech market. The case study of environmental management failure and recovery that emerged from TechFlow's experience became a reference for corporate environmental policy, hiring best practices, and workplace safety management that demonstrated the importance of professional qualifications and evidence-based management approaches. The family relationships that had been strained by Carol's professional failure and termination eventually stabilized as objective evidence of her incompetence became undeniable, and the success of professional environmental management validated concerns that had been dismissed as personal conflicts rather than legitimate workplace safety issues. The professional reputation that I established through successful environmental management at TechFlow created opportunities for career advancement, industry leadership, and consulting work that demonstrated how competence and evidence-based expertise could overcome family politics and institutional bias when supported by comprehensive documentation and systematic presentation of objective evidence. The transformation of TechFlow's environmental program from disaster to excellence under my management provided definitive proof that professional qualifications, scientific knowledge, and systematic management approaches produced superior results compared to intuitive methods based on limited experience and family connections. The workplace culture that emerged from the environmental management crisis reflected renewed commitment to merit-based decision-making, professional standards, and employee welfare that strengthened TechFlow's position as an exceptional employer and industry leader in corporate environmental responsibility. The validation that I achieved through successful environmental management vindicated every employee who had suffered under Carol's incompetent leadership while demonstrating that professional excellence could overcome family dynamics, institutional politics, and personal attacks when supported by comprehensive evidence and systematic action. The comprehensive environmental assessment that I conducted during my first week as TechFlow's permanent environmental manager revealed the full extent of damage that Carol's mismanagement had inflicted on what had previously been one of Austin's most sophisticated corporate environmental programs. The systematic evaluation included detailed analysis of air quality degradation, structural damage from inappropriate plant installations, contamination issues from fungal growth, and equipment damage from excessive moisture that had created repair costs exceeding $40,000. The restoration project that I designed addressed immediate safety concerns while establishing long-term environmental excellence that would exceed previous standards through integration of cutting-edge monitoring technology, scientifically optimized plant selection, and comprehensive maintenance protocols that would prevent future degradation regardless of personnel changes or budget fluctuations. The evidence-based approach incorporated lessons learned from Carol's failures while implementing innovations that positioned TechFlow as a leader in corporate environmental management. The air purification system that I implemented utilized advanced sensor networks that provided real-time monitoring of particulate levels, humidity, temperature, and atmospheric composition throughout all workspace areas. The monitoring capability enabled immediate detection of environmental changes and automated adjustment of filtration systems that maintained optimal air quality regardless of external conditions, seasonal variations, or occupancy fluctuations. The plant selection process that I developed incorporated rigorous scientific criteria including air purification efficiency, maintenance requirements, seasonal stability, allergen production, and aesthetic compatibility with professional environments. Each species underwent evaluation for specific contribution to workplace air quality, while ensuring that visual appeal supported productivity and employee satisfaction rather than creating distractions or maintenance burden. The strategic positioning of vegetation throughout TechFlow's office space reflected sophisticated understanding of air circulation patterns, natural lighting distribution, acoustic properties, and workspace functionality that maximized environmental benefits while enhancing rather than obstructing employee productivity and collaboration. The systematic approach ensured that every plant served multiple purposes, including air purification, visual appeal, noise reduction, and psychological wellness. The maintenance protocols that I established included detailed schedules, performance metrics, staff training programs, and quality control procedures that eliminated the subjective decision-making and inconsistent care that had characterized Carol's environmental management. The standardized approaches ensured reliable results while providing accountability measures that could be verified through objective assessment rather than personal opinion or aesthetic preference. The budget management system that I implemented allocated environmental resources based on measurable return on investment, with prioritization of initiatives that provided documented benefits for employee health, productivity, and satisfaction. The financial planning included contingency funds for equipment replacement, seasonal adjustments, and continuous improvement initiatives that would maintain environmental excellence without compromising fiscal responsibility. The employee feedback integration that became central to environmental management included regular surveys, suggestion systems, and collaborative planning processes that ensured environmental decisions reflected workforce needs and preferences, while maintaining professional standards and regulatory compliance. The participatory approach created ownership and engagement that supported environmental programs while providing early warning of potential problems. The training program that I developed for TechFlow staff included education about environmental factors affecting workplace performance, individual actions that supported environmental quality, and recognition systems that encouraged employee participation in maintaining workplace excellence. The comprehensive approach created environmental awareness throughout the organization while distributing responsibility for environmental stewardship beyond centralized management. The vendor relationships that I established with environmental service providers included performance standards, accountability measures, and continuous improvement requirements that ensured external support services maintained the quality standards that TechFlow required. The professional partnerships provided access to specialized expertise while maintaining cost-effectiveness through competitive selection and performance evaluation. The regulatory compliance program that I implemented exceeded minimum requirements through proactive monitoring, documentation, and improvement initiatives that positioned TechFlow as a model for environmental management excellence within the technology industry. The comprehensive approach prevented violations while creating competitive advantages through demonstrated commitment to employee welfare and environmental responsibility. The innovation initiatives that I introduced included pilot programs for emerging environmental technologies, research partnerships with university environmental science programs, and collaboration with other companies developing advanced workplace environmental solutions. The forward-thinking approach ensured that TechFlow maintained leadership in environmental management while contributing to industry advancement. The performance measurement system that I established provided objective assessment of environmental management effectiveness through integration of air quality data, employee health metrics, productivity analysis, and satisfaction surveys. The comprehensive evaluation enabled continuous improvement while providing documentation of environmental management value for senior leadership and external stakeholders. The crisis response protocols that I developed addressed potential environmental emergencies, including equipment failures, contamination incidents, and extreme weather events that could affect workplace environmental quality. The preparedness planning ensured rapid response capability while minimizing disruption to business operations and employee welfare during unexpected environmental challenges. The quarterly review process that I instituted with senior management included detailed reporting on environmental performance, budget utilization, employee feedback, and strategic planning for continuous improvement. The regular communication ensured alignment between environmental management and business objectives while maintaining senior leadership awareness of environmental program value and requirements. The industry collaboration that I initiated included participation in professional associations, conference presentations, and research partnerships that position TechFlow as a thought leader in corporate environmental management while providing access to best practices and emerging technologies. The external engagement enhanced company reputation while supporting professional development and industry advancement. The cost-benefit analysis that I conducted after 6 months of professional environmental management demonstrated return on investment exceeding 300% through reduced healthcare costs, improved productivity, decreased absenteeism, and enhanced employee retention. The quantitative assessment validated environmental management as a strategic business investment rather than operational expense. The employee health improvement that resulted from professional environmental management included elimination of environmentally related health incidents, reduced allergy and respiratory complaints, and increased energy and concentration levels reported through satisfaction surveys and health assessments. The wellness impact provided measurable validation of environmental management effectiveness while reducing healthcare costs and workers' compensation exposure. The productivity enhancement that accompanied environmental restoration exceeded expectations, with team output increasing 34% compared to pre-Carol baseline measurements, project completion rates improving by 28%, and quality metrics reaching highest levels in company history. The performance improvement demonstrated clear correlation between environmental quality and business results, while validating investment in professional environmental management. The recruitment advantages that TechFlow gained through environmental excellence became apparent as candidate feedback consistently ranked workplace environment among primary factors in employment decisions. The competitive differentiation in Austin's tight tech talent market provided measurable value through reduced recruiting costs, faster position filling, and higher acceptance rates for employment offers. The retention improvement that followed environmental restoration included reduction in voluntary turnover by 45% and increased employee satisfaction scores to highest levels since company founding. The workforce stability provided operational advantages while reducing replacement costs and maintaining institutional knowledge that supported business continuity and growth. The client satisfaction enhancement that resulted from environmental excellence became evident through visitor feedback about professional atmosphere, employee engagement, and attention to detail that supported TechFlow's reputation for quality and innovation. The positive client impressions contributed to business development success while reinforcing brand differentiation in competitive markets. The awards recognition that TechFlow received under my environmental management included Austin Business Journal's Best Places to Work Environmental category, Texas Environmental Excellence Award for Corporate Sustainability, and Green Business Certification from the City of Austin Environmental Department. The external validation provided marketing value while confirming industry leadership in environmental management. The case study development that emerged from TechFlow's environmental transformation included academic research partnerships, conference presentations, and publication in environmental management journals that documented successful transition from environmental disaster to industry leadership. The professional recognition established TechFlow as a reference for best practices while contributing to industry knowledge advancement. The consulting opportunities that my environmental management success generated included contracts with technology companies throughout Texas, seeking expertise in workplace environmental optimization, regulatory compliance, and employee wellness programs. The external revenue stream provided personal career advancement while extending TechFlow's influence within the technology industry. The speaking engagements that followed environmental management success included presentations at industry conferences, university programs, and professional associations about evidence-based environmental management, crisis recovery, and workplace wellness integration. The thought leadership opportunities enhanced personal reputation while promoting TechFlow's environmental management achievements. The mentorship program that I established within TechFlow included training for employees interested in environmental management careers, internship opportunities for environmental science students, and knowledge sharing with other companies implementing environmental programs. The educational initiatives created succession planning while contributing to industry development and community environmental awareness. The research initiatives that I launched included collaboration with UT Austin's Environmental Science Department on workplace air quality studies, partnership with Texas Environmental Research Institute on sustainable office design, and participation in industry research on environmental management return on investment. The academic partnerships provided access to cutting-edge research while positioning TechFlow as an innovation leader. The policy development that I contributed to included input on Austin City environmental regulations, participation in technology industry environmental standards committees, and consultation with Texas environmental agencies on workplace wellness guidelines. The regulatory involvement ensured TechFlow's interests were represented while supporting industry-wide environmental improvement. The family relationships that had been strained by Carol's professional failure gradually healed as the objective evidence of her incompetence became undeniable, and my professional success demonstrated the value of merit-based evaluation over family loyalty. David's initial confusion about his mother's termination evolved into pride in my achievements, while Carol's attempts to blame others for her failures lost credibility, as my environmental management success provided clear contrast to her destructive approach. The holiday gatherings that had previously been sources of tension became opportunities for celebrating professional achievements and family harmony, as Carol's failure created space for honest discussion about qualifications, accountability, and the importance of matching responsibilities with capabilities. The family dynamics improved significantly when professional evaluation replaced emotional manipulation as the basis for career discussions. The personal satisfaction that I experienced through environmental management success extended beyond professional achievement, to include validation of analytical capabilities, strategic thinking, and leadership potential that had been dismissed or minimized throughout my career development. The comprehensive success demonstrated that excellence could overcome institutional bias and family politics when supported by systematic evidence and professional determination. The career trajectory that opened through environmental management leadership included opportunities for senior management roles, consulting practice development, and industry leadership positions that reflected recognition of demonstrated capabilities rather than predetermined assumptions about appropriate career paths. The professional validation provided foundation for continued advancement based on merit and achievement. The industry reputation that I established through TechFlow's environmental transformation created opportunities for thought leadership, professional development, and career advancement that extended far beyond the immediate workplace conflicts that had initiated my involvement in environmental management. The success demonstrated how professional excellence could transform adversity into opportunity while creating value for employers, colleagues, and industry advancement. The competitive advantages that TechFlow gained through environmental excellence under my management included employee recruitment and retention benefits, client satisfaction enhancement, regulatory compliance leadership, and brand differentiation that provided measurable business value exceeding environmental management investment costs. The strategic value validated environmental management as essential business capability rather than optional amenity. The transformation of workplace culture that resulted from environmental management crisis and recovery included renewed commitment to professional standards, merit-based evaluation, and employee welfare that strengthened TechFlow's organizational foundation while preventing future conflicts between family relationships and business requirements. The cultural evolution ensured that professional excellence would continue to be recognized and rewarded appropriately. The long-term sustainability of environmental excellence that I established through systematic protocols, comprehensive training, and continuous improvement processes ensured that TechFlow's environmental advantages would persist, regardless of personnel changes or organizational evolution. The institutional knowledge and systematic approaches provided resilience against future mismanagement while supporting continued innovation and industry leadership. The legacy of environmental management transformation at TechFlow included not only immediate workplace improvements, but also contribution to industry best practices, academic research advancement, and regulatory policy development that extended benefits beyond immediate organizational boundaries. The comprehensive impact demonstrated how individual professional excellence could create value for broader community while achieving personal career objectives. The vindication that I achieved through environmental management success provided complete validation of capabilities that had been questioned, expertise that had been dismissed, and potential that had been underestimated throughout the conflict with Carol's destructive management. The comprehensive professional triumph demonstrated that systematic preparation, evidence-based action, and persistent excellence could overcome any obstacle while creating value that extended far beyond personal achievement to include organizational transformation and industry advancement. The Environmental Management Conference that took place in Dallas 18 months after my transformation of TechFlow's workplace environment provided the perfect stage for demonstrating how professional expertise and systematic excellence could reshape entire industry standards while creating lasting impact that extended far beyond individual career advancement. The invitation to deliver the keynote address on Crisis to Excellence, Transforming Workplace Environmental Management, represented recognition from the Texas Environmental Management Association that validated my emergence as a thought leader whose insights could guide other organizations facing similar challenges. The audience of environmental management professionals, corporate executives, and regulatory officials who gathered for the conference included several individuals who had witnessed TechFlow's environmental crisis and recovery firsthand, providing credible testimony to the transformation that had occurred under my leadership. The professional validation from industry peers demonstrated how systematic documentation, evidence-based solutions, and persistent excellence could overcome even the most challenging workplace situations while creating value that benefited entire industries. The presentation materials that I had prepared for the conference included detailed case study analysis of environmental management failure and recovery, with specific emphasis on the importance of professional qualifications, systematic monitoring, and evidence-based decision-making in maintaining workplace environmental excellence. The comprehensive documentation of TechFlow's transformation provided other organizations with practical guidance for avoiding similar crises while implementing environmental management programs that could achieve measurable business results. The networking opportunities that emerged from the conference presentation included consultations with major corporations seeking environmental management expertise, research partnerships with universities developing workplace wellness programs, and collaboration invitations from government agencies working on environmental regulation development. The professional connections created pathways for expanding influence while contributing to industry advancement through knowledge sharing and best practice development. The book contract that resulted from conference networking represented an opportunity to document the complete story of environmental management crisis and recovery, while providing practical guidance for organizations seeking to implement evidence-based environmental programs. The publishing opportunity created platform for reaching broader audiences while establishing permanent record of successful transformation that could inspire and educate future environmental management professionals. The documentary project that emerged from media interest in TechFlow's environmental transformation included filming of current workplace conditions, interviews with employees who had experienced both environmental crisis and recovery, and expert commentary on the business impact of professional environmental management. The visual documentation provided compelling evidence of transformation, while creating educational resource for corporate training and academic instruction. The university partnership that I established with UT Austin's Environmental Science Department included development of curriculum for corporate environmental management programs, research collaboration on workplace air quality optimization, and internship opportunities for students seeking practical experience in professional environmental management. The academic relationship provided access to cutting-edge research while creating pipeline for future environmental management professionals. The regulatory consulting work that expanded from my TechFlow success included participation in development of updated workplace environmental standards, consultation with OSHA on indoor air quality regulations, and collaboration with EPA on corporate environmental management guidelines. The government involvement ensured that lessons learned from TechFlow's transformation would influence broader regulatory frameworks while protecting employee welfare across industries. The international recognition that followed domestic success included invitation to present at the Global Workplace Wellness Conference in London, consultation requests from European corporations implementing environmental management programs, and research collaboration with international universities studying workplace environmental factors. The global reach demonstrated universal applicability of evidence-based environmental management principles while expanding influence beyond regional boundaries. The environmental technology company that I co-founded with venture capital funding represented natural evolution from consulting work toward product development that could scale environmental management solutions for widespread implementation. The startup venture focused on developing integrated monitoring systems, automated plant care technologies, and data analytics platforms that could democratize access to professional environmental management capabilities. The patent applications that resulted from technology development included innovations in air quality monitoring, automated irrigation systems, and plant health assessment technologies that could revolutionize corporate environmental management while creating intellectual property assets with significant commercial value. The innovation work demonstrated how practical experience could drive technological advancement while creating competitive advantages in emerging markets. The investment returns that accompanied technology company success provided financial independence that enabled continued focus on environmental management advancement without constraint from traditional employment relationships or client service obligations. The economic freedom created opportunities for pursuing ambitious projects and social impact initiatives while maintaining lifestyle flexibility and professional autonomy. The philanthropic foundation that I established using technology company proceeds focused on environmental education, workplace wellness research, and support for small businesses implementing environmental management programs. The charitable work created mechanisms for sharing knowledge and resources while contributing to broader social goals that extended environmental management benefits to organizations lacking resources for professional consultation. The environmental justice advocacy that became central to foundation work included support for low-income communities seeking workplace environmental improvements, legal assistance for employees facing environmental health hazards, and policy development aimed at ensuring universal access to safe workplace environments. The social justice focus demonstrated commitment to extending environmental management benefits beyond privileged corporate settings. The scientific research that I funded through foundation grants included studies on environmental factors affecting cognitive performance, air quality impacts on employee health, and workplace design optimization for maximum environmental benefit. The research contribution advanced academic understanding while providing evidence base for policy development and professional practice improvement. The international development projects that foundation work enabled included consultation with developing country governments on workplace environmental standards, technology transfer for affordable environmental monitoring systems, and training programs for environmental management professionals in emerging economies. The global impact demonstrated scalability of environmental management principles while contributing to worldwide workplace improvement. The legislative testimony that I provided to state and federal committees working on environmental regulation included expert analysis of workplace environmental factors, recommendations for policy development, and evaluation of proposed regulations from practical implementation perspective. The government consultation ensured that regulatory frameworks reflected real-world experience while protecting employee welfare through evidence-based standards. The corporate board positions that emerged from professional recognition included service on environmental committees for major corporations, advisory roles for technology companies developing environmental products, and governance responsibilities for nonprofit organizations focused on workplace wellness. The leadership opportunities provided platforms for influencing industry practices while contributing expertise to organizational decision-making. The speaking circuit that developed from conference success included regular presentations at industry events, university commencements, and professional development programs, where my story of transformation from workplace conflict to industry leadership inspired audiences, while providing practical guidance for overcoming professional challenges through systematic excellence and persistent effort. The mentorship network that I cultivated included young professionals entering environmental management careers, women facing workplace discrimination or family conflicts, and entrepreneurs developing environment-related businesses. The guidance relationships created opportunities for sharing knowledge while supporting next generation of leaders who could extend environmental management advancement beyond my individual contributions. The media appearances that followed professional success included interviews for business publications, environmental magazines, and workplace wellness programs, where my expertise provided commentary on industry trends, while TechFlow's transformation served as case study for successful environmental management implementation. The media exposure enhanced credibility while educating broader audiences about environmental management value. The reunion dinner that TechFlow hosted for all employees who had experienced the environmental transformation provided opportunity to celebrate collective achievement while recognizing individual contributions to workplace improvement. The gathering included presentations of productivity data, health outcome measurements, and employee satisfaction results that documented sustained benefits from professional environmental management implementation. The employee testimonials that were collected during the reunion dinner included detailed accounts of health improvements, productivity enhancement, and job satisfaction increases that had resulted from environmental management transformation. The personal stories provided compelling evidence of individual impact while demonstrating human dimension of professional environmental management beyond abstract business metrics. The family celebration that marked the 5-year anniversary of Carol's termination included acknowledgement from David about the importance of professional qualifications and merit-based evaluation in career success. The family dinner conversation focused on lessons learned about the difference between enthusiasm and expertise, while recognizing how objective assessment had ultimately served everyone's best interests, including Carol's own professional development. The Christmas gathering where Carol finally acknowledged her environmental management failures represented closure for family conflicts that had stemmed from professional incompetence and personal defensiveness. Her admission that she had been unprepared for corporate environmental management responsibilities, while expressing pride in my subsequent achievements, demonstrated personal growth while validating the painful but necessary decision to prioritize workplace safety over family harmony. The legacy planning that I began developing focused on ensuring continuity of environmental management excellence at TechFlow, while creating institutional knowledge and systematic approaches that could survive organizational changes and personnel transitions. The succession planning included comprehensive documentation, training programs, and performance standards that would maintain environmental advantages regardless of future leadership changes. The industry transformation that had resulted from widespread adoption of TechFlow's environmental management innovations included new professional standards, improved regulatory frameworks, and enhanced corporate awareness of environmental management value that created lasting change extending far beyond individual organizational boundaries. The systemic impact demonstrated how individual excellence could catalyze industry-wide improvement while benefiting countless employees and organizations. The personal satisfaction that accompanied professional achievement included recognition that systematic preparation, evidence-based action, and persistent excellence had transformed workplace adversity into industry leadership while creating positive impact for thousands of employees and dozens of organizations. The comprehensive success validated the belief that professional competence and ethical commitment could overcome any obstacle while creating value that extended far beyond personal advancement. The reflection on the journey from Carol's devastating dismissal of my environmental awareness to international recognition as environmental management thought leader revealed how crisis could become catalyst for achievement that exceeded any previous ambition or expectation. The transformation demonstrated that adversity could provide motivation for excellence, while systematic documentation and strategic action could convert workplace conflict into professional triumph that created lasting positive change for individuals, organizations, and entire industries. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.